Hello everyone, I'm Tracy and thank you for tuning in today. So I have another Lahaina Fires update. I'm going to be focusing mainly on the news release or news conference that they did on the 15th on Friday in the Maui Police Department, I guess, press room, and just point out some inconsistencies that I heard and give you guys some opinions of what I think. So the first thing I noticed is the room is much different than the room we previously saw. I think it's probably a different room. And it's a very dark, kind of a somber mood in there. It's very quiet. You know, there were three men up there, no cameras pointed at the audience, so we didn't get to see the faces of the journalist, and it didn't seem like they allowed any other film crews in there like you normally see in a press conference. And there was a woman that was kind of moderating. I feel like her job was to kind of prevent any uncomfortable questions or situations, but it didn't go like that. The questions seemed very planned and very staged, and nothing that I think nothing I would have asked. Anyhow, we'll get to that in a second. So some of the inconsistencies that John Pelletier, the police chief, brings up is, so the number of missing, it was in the very beginning, we're thinking there was a kind of a estimate of 2,000 to 3,000 missing, and then it went down to 1,100, then it went down to 388, 385, 66, and now there's 31.
We created a process 4 weeks ago, and we talked about trusting the process. And so for those that don't understand what we meant by that, it was the process referenced the unaccounted, and to get us to a point that we would understand the size and scope of the situation we were in. We had a whole bunch of data sources that poured in, and we had well over 3,000 names that came in from a variety of places. And over the past 4 weeks, with thousands of hours from the FBI as well as our task force at the Mint, we've been able to reduce it from 388, 385 to 66 to now 31. And what's important about the 31 and why this is key is every single one of those names has an MPD missing person report associated with it. Because of the MPD reports, yesterday we recovered 2 additional individuals because we had actionable intelligence in a police report.
The way they explain the 31 missing is that those are how many missing persons reports the Maui Police Department has. So that's kind of how they explain that. I personally think that there is a better way to accurately count how many missing people are from the fire. And then another thing he talks about is the number of deceased. So for the past 3 weeks, the number has been very steady at 115. And he then goes to say that the number is now 74 individuals.
Which is why, if you think about it, 5.5 weeks later, we've identified 74 individuals. We've got DNA profiles on 95 individuals. And we are constantly striving to make sure that we do this to the best of our ability.
I don't know how that number came out, the 74, because later on he says 97, not 115. That is a number we're moving forward with. So it's 97.
The number that we're moving forward right now is we have 97, not 115, and they will explain why that is. We don't just have a couple folks that are here today that have been working on this. I think it's really important that folks understand this. So the medical examiner that MPD hired, and we were going to get him this month, but Dr. Jeremy Stupendagel, when he came to us, he came with more experience than even I knew at the time, but he worked on 9/11 cases in New York for the time he was there. They're still doing cases. They just identified 2 more people, and he worked there for over 10 years. And so we're using reports from New York City that were used. We're contacting from Pennsylvania when Flight 93 went down. We're looking at all the data points we can to make this the best, most concrete investigation and process we have.
And I feel like this, news release was done to make things sound more complicated than it actually is. And I know for me personally, I had a hard time keeping up with these numbers they were throwing out. It was very hard for me to listen to as well. And I just couldn't make sense. And I just wanted to point out that I don't know if this is their way of reducing the number of missing and deceased, but it feels like they're just kind of coming up with some excuses as to why these numbers dropped so drastically. Another person that was introduced for the first time, I've never heard of this man before, is they brought up a doctor. He's a forensic pathologist. His name is Dr. Stupendagel, and he's introduced as a doctor that worked on 9/11, the 9/11 recovery. He had 10 years doing that. And that brings up something else, and I think a lot of you mentioned it, or a lot of comments went in that news conference, that now we have 2 individuals up there that were involved with 3 massive American tragedies. So we have the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. Then we have 9/11, the biggest domestic terrorist attack on U.S. soil in history. And now we're talking about the Lahaina fires. In my opinion, is the deadliest fire in modern U.S. history. So it's just a very, very big coincidence that these men were involved with those 3 events. Okay, something else that Pelletier said is he's using this time frame of 4 weeks, and that thousands of hours were poured into this 4 weeks to come up with these numbers. I just wanted to point out there's in 4 weeks there's not even 1,000 hours. I'm sure he didn't realize that. And then he also mentions, he makes this line that I don't understand. He says, at the FBI as well as our task force at the Mint. And I don't know what the Mint is. If anyone does know what that term means, please leave them in the comments. It could be an acronym for, Maui investigation something something. I just couldn't figure that out. Okay, and then these news conferences will be held every Friday moving forward. And some other things that they brought up, and I'm not sure how this relates to the Lahaina fires. He brings up the Flight 95 that went down in Pennsylvania. I'm assuming that is the 9/11 plane that hit the Pentagon at that time. And they're using all data points from that. I'm not sure how those data points match up with the Lahaina fires. They're different types of tragedies. And then also he mentioned that 5.5 weeks later, where he just said 4 weeks, and he changed it. He changed the time frame, and then he does go back from 74 individuals identified with DNA to 97. So I believe that was the last one. So according to him, it's 97 deceased. So the question came up as to how the number of missing and deceased have dropped so drastically. So I'll go into some of the many explanations, I guess, that they gave. So he mentions that it's only for people that have provided DNA, and he said it's DNA from 95 people. And the Dr. Stupendagel says that they found a lot of duplicate DNAs. So I guess when they're collecting samples, they were collecting samples from the same person. So it turns out those were, they couldn't count them as each one. They were duplicates. And they also said, this was kind of a weird comment to me, that some of them were not human. Where's that number? Oh, 16 of those remains that investigators had received were non-human. So I guess they're saying like pets and dogs and cats and things of that nature. I'll give you some of my personal feedback. I do think these numbers are purposely confusing and they are jumping back and forth. A general rule is if someone is telling the truth, the story stays pretty consistent. And it's when there is deception going on, when things, facts, and data points change. So I don't think I'm alone in thinking that these numbers are deceptive and they're not actual numbers. So that's my take on it. You guys could sound off in the comments if you think that as well. So that's the main thing I wanted to talk about regarding the news conference. Another topic I wanted to address, and I brought this up in my last video, is they found a substance called TNT. I'm not going to pronounce it because I keep forgetting, and I know I was corrected in the comments a number of times, but I did some research. I spoke to an arson investigator with many years of experience looking into fires, fighting fires, investigating fires, and he said that TNT is a very commonly found substance that is found in building materials like adhesives, and it actually helps structures withstand fire better. But when there is a fire and these substances burn, it releases these chemicals into the environment, so into the ground, into the rubble, into the air. So it is not uncommon that this substance would find its way into the water supply. And the fact that water got contaminated after a huge fire like this is to be expected. So if you're a little disappointed because you thought it was something else, I don't think it was intentionally put there as an accelerant. I don't think it was, dropped with chemtrails or anything like that. I just think it was something released because of the fire and that seeped into the water supply. Also, there were reports of many explosions, and I did ask him, is that normal? And he said that is completely normal with a big fire like this. There are many, many things that could explode: a small propane tank, ammunition, fireworks, pressurized vessels, and trees. So when trees are put under extreme heat, like a fire like this, the inside moisture will build up and the tree will actually explode, and it sounds very much like a bomb going off. So that, I think, explains why there were so many explosions going off. This was a huge fire, many trees, and that's my opinion on what those explosions were. Okay, and I'm going to refer back to the press conference and what wasn't done there, but there are no difficult questions that were asked. The questions that I think what are on most of our minds: first of all, why did the police officers block and barricade people into the fire? And now we're hearing more and more reports that many of the exits coming out of Lahaina were blocked by police officers and they were just following orders. So that would have been, if I were in the press room, it's probably the first question I would ask. And then the other question that is on many people's minds that weren't mentioned in this news conference is how many children. So they've been really avoiding this topic, and in a previous press conference,
panic and pandemonium. We want to deal with what we know is there. And we've got the area that we're searching, and we're doing everything we can to get those remains. and to do that recovery. So as far as the DNA, I'm gonna leave it over to that. But I do know that on the lists of 1,100, we don't have any children listed on that.
It's kind of hard to believe that, first of all, he would know that, and second of all, that he would assume that the missing weren't children. So there's still a huge question on that. I'm going to go into a little bit of what I think might have happened to those children. I'm trying to gather as much info, and I've gotten some info, but I want to do a more comprehensive analysis of that. So hopefully maybe later this week I'll have that up for you guys. Okay. I did want to mention also, if you are in the Lahaina, if you're in the Lahaina area or you're in Maui and you are looking for a person or you want to report someone missing and you don't feel comfortable going to the Maui Police Department, or maybe you can't get there right now, there is a Facebook page, and it is called, I'll link it down below, it is called Gone But Never Forget Hawaii's Missing People. And there is a link to go to the list of missing, it's missing, found, deceased, a page dedicated to the victims of the Lahaina fires. So if you are looking for someone you want to post there, there are a decent amount of people in this group. You can do that. Also, if you have questions about someone that you might not be related to or know very well, there's a lot of questions there. Like, I think one was, what happened to the woman that sold banana bread? You know, has she been found? Things like that. Hopefully that helps some of you guys out. So I did want to end this video on a positive note, well, positive for me. And I'm not sure how to feel about this. It was just very surreal. And I was just so touched to see this information. In my last video, I was looking through my numbers on YouTube, demographics, and I found my hometown on that list. Now, in case you guys don't know, I don't live in Hawaii anymore. I was born and raised on the island of Oahu, but I haven't lived there for some time. But I'm from a small town, and it was a shock to see it as a top geography. So I have, I guess, a contest or whatever you want to call it. The first 3 people that can put that town in the comments, I will send you guys a Maui Massacre shirt. And I also wanted to announce that I'm having shirts made. I'll put a picture up here. One of my very lovely subscribers, Debbie from Texas, designed this for me, and I'm having some made, and they should be in at least by next week, maybe the end of this week. And so I was just shocked to see my little town as a top geography. So yeah, if you can put that down below, the 3 people, I'll send you guys a shirt or 2. And don't look on my social media because it's not there. So hopefully that will do it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for sticking in this fight and spreading the momentum that we need to keep this story alive. I'm really afraid that this whole thing is going to be forgotten and the victims of this fire will be left on their own. So thank you guys, everyone watching, everyone that shared and commented and liked. Thank you for keeping this topic alive. So thank you guys so much. I'll see you all soon. Bye.